What's going on, everybody? It's just another day in the kitchen, back with another episode. And today we're taking a look at the Weeknd's After Hours album merch, which is honestly really surprising. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the actual release, taking us back 3 years, back to 2020 March, and you guys are going to be really impressed. Now, I know I haven't talked about the Weeknd, and you might be wondering why I'm making this video, but as you can see, my guy is still pulling in over 107 million Spotify streams a month. I would say he is very much so relevant. Now, one thing I always appreciate when artists do is actually wear their own merch, and as you can see, here's the Weeknd back in 2020 spotted wearing some After Hours merch. I also wanted to point out that my dude is wearing the Air Jordan 1 Dior's, which are pretty insane given how expensive they are. Now, I also wanted to include a picture of your boy all the way back in 2017 where I was rocking some Starboy merch and, of course, the Air Jordan 1 Breads. Holla at your boy. And before I go any further, I, of course, wanted to give a special shout out to all of you guys that have recommended these Weeknd videos over the last couple of weeks, because if it isn't apparent, I'm definitely a big fan of him and have been for several years. And like I said, I'm excited to actually share this merch with you. Now, the theme of this album is definitely different, and it did come about 4 years after the release of the Starboy album, so I feel like we didn't really know what to expect. But personally, this album drop is very surprising in the best way, and you'll see why in just a little bit. I also do want to remark that there are several waves of this merch, but I decided to show you guys what I thought were the best. And we're going to start off with this piece right here, which reminds me of honestly some Travis Scott tie-dye theme type of merch. And the first thing I want to remark with all of these pieces, and most of them, is the affordability of them. As you guys can see, this first piece of merch right here is $38, followed by that tee for $34. And honestly, the pricing is very consistent. These hoodies right here start anywhere from $82 to $72, which I definitely appreciate. Now, of course, with all merch-related videos, I wanted to highlight the fact that this one doesn't ship for 6 to 8 weeks, which is about standard. However, I also wanted to point out something that I really appreciate about this drop, and it's going to be that banner that you guys see streaming up at the top there. The message basically says that they're doing their best to deliver your order on time, and although they may experience some delays in some places, they're going to try to do the best that they can. If you can recall, this was in 2020 when COVID was going down, so I'm sure they had some shipping delays. And the reason why I wanted to point this out is the fact that look at how easy it is to go ahead and let your fans and supporters know that there might be delays. I feel like people like Travis Scott and his team could definitely take some notes, especially given how horrendous this Utopia shipping situation has been, and let me know in the comments if you agree. Now, we did see a really dope Zippo lighter for $45. And another thing I wanted to point out about this Weeknd merch drop is the fact that every single piece of merch, regardless if it's a tee, if it's a cassette, or whatever it might be, actually included a free digital download of the album itself. Now, if you remember, this was during the era when album sales were inflated heavily by merch. And personally, I don't think that artists as big as Travis and The Weeknd, for example, need to do things like that just because of how fire their albums actually are and the music itself. But the music industry is the music industry, and it is what it is. If anything, I'm glad we got to see some really sick merch pieces. Now, as you can tell from this drop itself, there is a whole lot of variety, anything from sweatshirts to crew necks to hoodies and things like that. And I wanted to highlight some of this classic XO merchandise, which has been the Weeknd's theme, of course, honestly, since he's been around. Now, with any great merch drop, you've got to have some type of socks. And I also wanted to apologize that some of these pieces did get cut off while recording this video because the website itself was just formatted kind of crazy. Now, here are some dope party-related items. You've got an ashtray for when you're smoking that gas. You got a flask for when you're trying to turn up. And a merch piece I haven't actually seen before is a lollipop that's available, which comes in something that looks like a little weed bag. Now, personally, I think that this keychain 3D model of the Weeknd's head is actually really raw. And speaking of the album itself, I'd love to know what your guys' favorite song is. Personally, I think mine has to be After Hours, the actual lead single. However, there are a lot of bangers on here, and I've been a big fan of The Weeknd. And with that, let me know what you think about the album in general. Now, for a dope piece of merch that I kind of wish other artists would start doing again as well are some collector's pins, as you guys can see here. And those are always great to throw on a hat or, I don't know, a jacket or a vest or something like that. We do have a dope little hat here which features the cycles of the moon, and to the right of it there's a gold tray which you can use for, I don't know, rolling up or whatever you want to do with it. Now, there are definitely a lot of dope pieces in here, and while there are a lot of album themed pieces, I do think that there's something in this drop for everyone, which I think is great. And as you can tell, the pricing is very, very consistent. Now, there is some overlap on the website, so I do apologize for that, but I also wanted to point out that item to the top right, which is a mason jar. If you're not familiar, that's just basically a glass jar which you can store alcohol in or other items. And if I had to guess between this first wave and the second wave, there's easily over 200 pieces of merch, so there's no reason that you can't find something for yourself. Now, I did want to point out that there was another lollipop that we did just see, and there's also this gold case which is available, but I wasn't able to see just quite what you could fit in it. Now, there were some pieces that featured those flames, which I think is pretty hard, and there's a clock, which I think we've seen in a similar Travis Scott type of drop. Now, something that is kind of thematic, which makes sense, is the whole Lick the Toad theme. And then, of course, you have that image of The Weeknd tripping from the glasses, so that definitely makes sense. Now, on a different day from the actual album release, we did see some other pieces, and I did want to just show you guys some of the ones that I thought were more notable, and also highlighting again just how cheap this merch is, given that in the most recent Travis Scott Utopia drop, the cheapest t-shirt was about $55. Now, of the most notable pieces from the second wave, I wanted to start off with the fact that The Weeknd actually had a collaboration with OGG. If you're not familiar with what that is, and I might be butchering the pronunciation, so don't kill me in the comments, it's an art collective that's been doing A$AP Rocky's amazing visuals and art direction for the last couple of years. Now, this is a really dope collaboration, and although the two are giants, I think it's insane that the price still is not even increasing that much, only being $44 given it's a collaboration basically between A$AP Rocky's crew and The Weeknd for some dope themed merch. Now, I just wanted to point out that the shipping is also consistently 5 to 6 weeks, and on the actual tee itself, you can see that The Weeknd is featured there on that black and white negative, as well as on the sleeves, which I think is actually pretty hard. And to go with the rest of these OGG related pieces, we of course have some dope shorts, so you can wear the whole outfit, and you got a dope little towel, so you can wear that as well. And one thing I wanted to point out about this after hours merch is I think it's cool how a lot of it stays thematic to that whole casino vibe and just the whole presence that he had in the music videos when he was at the casinos and whatnot. Now, of course, we did see some of these pieces already in the first wave. However, there are some new ones sprinkled in here as well. I think for any vinyl collector to own some of these exclusive pieces has to be pretty dope itself. And like I mentioned, I haven't actually seen an artist do any kind of food for a merch release, so the fact that he got away with lollipops, I think is pretty raw. Now, personally, these next couple of pieces I think are really hard with that fire, and we did see that in the first wave as well. And for those of you that did pick up anything from this drop from 3 years ago, I'd love to know how you feel about it today. And let us know in the comments how the quality is. Personally, I think these playing cards are also a really dope accessory. Now, with all that being said, personally, I was really surprised by this weekend's merch drop. I was surprised at how much actual variety there was, and more importantly, how cheap everything is. I don't think that being cheap in this case is necessarily a bad thing because it allows fans to actually get their hands on things, and I did see that he was shipping internationally, which is also great for all of his international fans. Now, with that being said, as always, guys, thank you so much for checking out these videos. Thank you so much for cooking with the kitchen. Stay safe out here, guys. It's lit. Straight up and peace. And make sure you guys like and subscribe or else.